All right, folks, I got 6 o'clock. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome, folks, to the March 28th meeting of the Town of Canandaigua Planning Board. Since we have some new people here this evening, I'll go around and introduce everybody at the front tables. My far right is Kim Burkert. She's our remote access facilitator. And we have Anita Twitchell, our secretary. Mark Tolbert, member of the planning board. Scott Neal, member of the planning board. Amanda Van Lincoln, member of the board. Bob O'Course, member of the board. I'm Chuck Euler, member of the board and chairman. Sean Bonchak, town planner. Chris Nadler was here somewhere. We'll step up for a minute. You're blessed with our attorney this evening, Chris Nadler, and Lance Brevet representing our engineering engineer MRV group. Okay, I don't want to spend a lot of time on protocol as to how we want to run the meeting, but we're going to follow the agenda as published. And when we come to a particular part of the agenda that you would like to address the board, we ask you come to the podium, give us your name and address, give us your comments or questions. And if the applicant is here and it's time for him or her to make a presentation, that person would come to the dais and to the podium and make their presentation. We will then consider what has been presented, the board itself. We will ask questions, and then we'll go to the public and ask the public if anyone would like to ask us anything regarding a specific application. And then we would reconvene as the board and hopefully come to a decision. So we have this evening no public hearings. So we did not have to get involved with any legal notices. First order of business would be privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here or in virtual land that would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda? Now is the time to do that. And I would seek anyone who would like to speak. Okay, hearing none. We'll go on with our applications this evening. First one is CPN 22077, Venezia Associates representing Marie McNabb and Ernest Smith Beck, property owners in Rochester, but they are specifically looking to address a property in Canandaigua at 5285 Black Point Drive. It's requesting a single stage site plan approval for a tear down of an existing structure and construction of a single family residence. That's Pilgrim's plan. Can you pull up the site plan? This was an application that came to us before the first of the year. I think there was an issue with the on-site septic system as far as getting that approved.
Yes.
So it was held in advance until that got completed. And I think we're able to move on.
Yeah, you've seen it on the planning board agenda for a little while due to continuing it on for the septic approval from the watershed.
That's not else. So we have Anthony Venezia.
We do have yours.
Representing the applicant. There was also an issue, Anthony, if I recall, regarding steep slopes, making sure. And I think you submitted a slopes map.
Yeah, so what the plan is there's a current home and there's a current garage with an apartment above it. And it's all supplied by a septic system is in use. The septic system in this situation wasn't adequate. After a little more investigation, and Bill Grove did a design to bring that system up to specs. So there is a current existing house. Plan is to tear it down and pretty much replace it in place. There is a steep slope that comes down from the backside, and right now that's causing a lot of problems with the house, just from years of slough and coming down. So one of the big things that we wanted to do with this was to kind of protect the house a little bit better. So there's going to be a riprap line swale that flanks the west side of the house that pushes water around the house to the north and lets it get to the lake. Whatever kind of water that does come off that, it'll help protect that west side of the house. So, and it's, the variances, there were no variances that were requested. We're staying in the same plane that the original house is from the high water line. There was really no other real big issues with the house except for that slope behind it. All the water is gonna be directed to an underground system, to a dry well on the north side of the house. That will collect any kind of storms, and then let the water get back into the groundwater. So if there's any questions.
Okay. Board. Open it up to you.
I didn't have anything, Anthony, other than, we've seen this all so many times. One thing that confused me is on your drawings, it's hard to tell where the house was and where it's gonna be.
Okay.
Maybe
That
in the
can kind of-
future, be separate.
This is the old house. We could do, like, this is the old house.
That's what I thought.
House is kind of- We're basically taking the house this way.
Yeah.
Counterclockwise rotation, like 10 degrees to get it better.
And I saw his comments on the wall, you're gonna put a retaining wall or anything in the back?
There's a smaller retaining wall on the southwest side just to kind of keep any kind of any material coming down that would get around the side of the house to keep it clean.
And that shows you details.
Yeah, there's a detail on. There's a detail. for sure.
Land.
Anybody else from the board?
There are a number of comments from ECB, just talking about existing foliage as well as any new foliage that's been addressed.
What was that?
There are a number of comments from the ECB, the Environmental Conservation Board, talking about controlling, leaving as much vegetation in place as possible, and then as new plantings were happening to maintain native species. Is that been addressed?
Yeah, that has been addressed. There are only, I think there's like one tree that's actually coming down. I believe we're gonna try to keep it, but if it comes down during construction, it will. It's like I said, we're pretty much in the same footprint, and the native species things was addressed by the architect who did the landscape plan. So he updated that. We updated that to reflect those comments. And then I actually went to one of the ECB meetings and gave a little bit more of an explanation, so they're pretty happy.
So the native species planning,
It's
You
on
took
the
care of that?
landscape plan. I couldn't. tell you what
Okay,
it is.
I think
Yeah,
Mark
Mark Muller
changed it.
came up with it. So. And then he addressed the, we changed it.
We took, there was an invasive Japanese.
We got rid of it.
something. Yeah.
Speaking of Marquee, it did submit a shoreline guideline statement. That said it has really no reshape from the lakes. The woods in front, right?
There are a lot of large trees that are in front of the house here and there, and there's also just all the way around kind of shade.
Is the board comfortable with the shoreline guideline compliance?
I was when I saw the plan.
Okay, and as far as steep slopes, as you said, steep slopes are mostly to the west.
Yeah, they're all, you can kind of see that line, the total bank runs right through here, and it's all. here. And a steep slope plan was addressed the color code as well.
It was beautiful.
And Lance, you had submitted a letter back in November, I guess.
Right, so I had that as a condition, just the final review and approval by MRB.
Aaron wrote a response letter.
She did.
She did.
You, as far as access, shared access,
There's a right of way that goes all the way to,
I think you had submitted that.
there is a plan that shows that.
It's a 60-foot right of way there. We talked about, I had asked Chris Jensen about the road access as far as fire, and he was okay, he was comfortable with enough.
Yeah, there's a big turnaround just south here, this kind of lies out, so. Kind of like the access comes down and goes back around. There's also another house there, start point.
NRI features have been delineated, we have steep slopes. Tree line, the limit disturbance, which maybe goes along with what Mark was talking about, to try to reduce the amount of disturbance of the, you are showing that as the,
Yeah, there's
Dark
limits of
areas.
disturbance there. We kind of are coming around depending on how they decide to upgrade this system. It's we kind of include this area as a disturbed area, but this is all in here. It's all gravel. It's a gravel driveway path that's existing. So, like I said, most of it's gonna be where existing structures and utilities are. And then a temporary sediment basin to catch all kind of construction storm runoff.
it is in the SVO, so there's no SVO issues as far as CP shed.
No.
Obviously, it's not performance. It's a lot. It's 1.8 acres. Okay. Sarah Linda had asked that to at least come out and take a look at the property, I guess, before they knock down the building.
I think that I talked to the owners.
That's probably a
courtesy.
courtesy. That was back in November, I think, was it? October.
You guys are okay with that, right? Mark said did he talk to you about that? Yeah, coming in and taking a look at the house, first, taking pictures.
Okay.
Before it's out.
On your seeker, part A, part one, I think Lance had brought up the two parts of that that were not answered, 13B and 17B.
Yes, and then just responded back with whether we revise that. I thought that was in Aaron's comment.
Yeah, they did revise it.
Yeah, I don't recall if it's been currently addressed, but that's was in our comment letter, which is a condition. But I know she had a response letter to that.
And to keep the seeker line. On question number 11, you had said that it would be served by public sewer.
Yes.
Right, it's gonna be.
Yes.
Right.
So that would have to be.
Yes.
Changed.
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yeah.
get you to speak up when you?
I'll speak
just
up?
a- You just a touch, thank
I thought I
you.
was shouting to begin with.
Yeah, plus I'm under.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure, Anita, thanks. As far as third-party reviews, got the no comments from the Cheshire Fire Company. Jim Fletcher did not submit a comment. We did not have to go to the county planning board for this. The driveway is in compliance with the fire code. Sorry to take this time, but it's been so long since we looked at this thing. The septic system, so
Yep, that's been approved.
Okay.
Approved, yes,
that's what. yeah.
with the garage.
The one bed
Yes,
garage.
the one that-
Another
gotcha.
side building.
Thank you.
No comments from Kevin O'Daney. I'll open it up to the public. Anybody in our audience that'd like to address the board regarding this application? See the applicants here this evening? Welcome back. Okay, I'm not hearing from anyone in public. I guess we can move on. Does the board have any other items they'd like to see discussed? If not, let's move on to the resolutions. We've got a type 2 action for seeker. Well, we can do a bundle on this. We'll go to site plan and seeker. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion to accept the seeker resolution type 2 action at 5285 Black Point Drive, and also the single stage site plan be approved at same location with the 8 still.
Yeah, I think it's 8, and because I added the short EAF is to be revised and forwarded to the town. But we're gonna strike condition number 4 as it references the watershed inspector's approval of the on-site wastewater system, which has already been approved.
Second.
Motion and a second, further discussion. The latest plan was the March 3rd plan. That's what we're looking at, I guess.
That was the.
Which
date.
one was-
That was the date of the land integrated submission. I don't.
The March 3rd plans. Those are. Yeah.
I was
Just
just.
the cross sections. added in there, comments.
You have the right plan in the resolution. Okay, for the comments, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All righty.
Yeah.
Let's move on to new site plan that Bill Grove is submitting on behalf of Douglas. Is that Booch, Botch? How do you pronounce? Boot?
Okay.
Sounds like that, yes.
Okay.
Artist for that. Mr. lives in Pittsford, and he owns property at Buffalo Street Extension. And he's requesting a single stage site plan approval, construction of a new single family residence and a pool. Hi, Bill.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So I'm Bill Grove representing Doug Group. So Doug owns 24 acres. It's in between Buffalo Street Extension and 5 and 20. Just up the road here. Almost a neighbor to this property. What he'd like to do is build a new house on the kind of the northeast corner. There's an existing driveway entry located right there. Wants to use that entry, put a driveway in, site the house kind of up on the knob. And then the raised fill septic that's downhill in the northwest direction. The house will be a walkout on the backside. It's to do a full walkout with a nice patio and pool. Attached garage, but also a detached pole barn. Pretty straightforward, I believe. It's on town water. We did get comments from Jim Fletcher about that. Chris probably has been in discussions about that. It sounds like. Oh, okay,
It is not, it's out of district,
okay.
so.
Oh, I have been in
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah, it's out of dis- yeah.
The email I got from Jim was, we're working on a way to include the home in the district.
Right, it might be an act.
It might be, it's going to be an act of town board approval, and I would recommend and request on behalf of the town that a condition be added to the approval that prior to any C of Os being issued. C of Os or building permits? C of Os being issued, the town attorney will and town highways water superintendent, excuse me, will need to approve the out of district user arrangement, which may even be as simple as an agreement between you and the town saying, I realize I'm an out of district user because of the location of the house, and I agree to pay, my fair share as if I was an in-district user. Did you get all that for the condition?
We will consider.
Yeah. I think twice, I think we should do it before.
Building permit, let's do building
Let's do
permit.
building.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, I think we both do.
As you see, well, no order.
It shouldn't be a long process, right? As an
No,
out-of-district
I think,
user.
yeah, I think Mr. Nadler said it would be very simple.
Yeah, let's say just, town, that's a town attorney, not planning with town attorney and water superintendent.
Anything else, Bill?
Not really, I know I've got list of comments from Lance at MRV. So I need to just address those. I don't think there's anything major on there.
How you making out with the septic? Where are you in the process?
It's gotta go to the state health department for review because it's a raised fill system.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got that ready to submit last. That's gonna take 8 to 10 weeks is what they're saying now. For approval.
You have it, Lance, and
Yeah, New York State.
Tyler, at the watershed office will also get a copy of that, but the approval doesn't come from
Right, come from you.
Be the same conditions.
Is that number 5?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Board, questions, comments, concerns?
Bill, just two things. One, your plans are always very good. You show everything that I want to see. So appreciate that all the time. I guess to the owner, there's a lot of land behind. Is that going to be still farmed or how are you going to?
That's the goal, is to farm it ourselves.
Good, awesome. Very good idea. Good ag land now.
That's why we kind of pushed the house towards the northern corner, it's flattery that we farm south there.
Yeah, be driver up there. Thank you.
And that probably connects with the pole farm and the use of the pole farm to support in those endeavors.
That's much after somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I know there was concern of the ag. Because they did say it could be a lessening of the farmland, available farmland. But I guess where you're putting the house compared to what you're gonna leave for farming, where the house is going, is not taking up that much of usable land.
No, also, if you go further north, you push it towards the road, it's really steep. And then it makes it not productive for the actual buildings there. And I just sell property, you want something else.
Lance, did you comment on this? I can't remember.
This one, yes, yep.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
It was pretty minor comments, there was nothing really specific that. Above, he was proposing stormwater mitigation. Bringing the appropriate water and sewer connection.
What about, question I have, a comment about potential for variances because of the.
Yes, thank you, there was, so I honestly, that comes down to the zoning determination which was rendered, and they didn't warrant that, so.
Because the barn is ag.
Okay.
And we think the ECB had the same concerns regarding protecting the farmland and protecting the NRI features, which there are quite a few on.
Yeah, on the western side of the property, it's wet, stream goes down through there. So that's what that hatching represents, and it shows up all dark on the PDF, simple plan, it's a lot later hatch.
Quite a bit of forest land on probably too.
Yeah.
Shows us 40% silver maple ash swamp, so it's a really nice job on designing and identifying the NRI and then designing it. So thank you.
It was easy because it just wouldn't make sense to try to develop anything down there anyway.
Do you have any constraints as far as septic setbacks from the stream of Brookline? Are there any regulations?
There are, yes, so we made it.
Well, the zone A.
There's the flood zone. Is right there, is in there. That's, yeah, there's.
I don't know how many feet you are from there.
It's right
Three
there.
it is.
I don't remember, yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's part of the DOH.
It is, I'm trying to think if there is a separation from the flood zone. I don't think there is.
Well,
Range
yeah.
fill is different.
Elevation wise, we have to make, we're lakefront property, like, up against the flood zone, we've got to be elevated above it. In this case, it's no issue, higher. But for setback distance, it's just typically from the stream.
Okay, other board members, so. The consensus, again, we talked about the ECB, the Ag Advisory Committee. No comments from Jim Fletcher. We talked about the MRB comments, which are resolution.
Just to back up, we did get comments from Jim Fletcher about the water service. He said that he'd like to see a 1-inch meter pit and then a 2-inch water service.
okay.
So, revise
I
that.
have a message.
But you got along.
Yeah.
no comments from the fire department. Nothing from the school district, nothing from propane tank, that's on the east side.
Yep.
What are the dimensions of the pole barn?
48 by 30 by 48. I think it's 30 by 48. I think. I think it's correct. It's a standard size that, yeah, it's like tight in line.
I think you ought to put that on the plans. Just I did see it, just to scale it, so. Okay, your driveway's gonna be gravel for the most part. You're gonna have the apron asphalt out at Buffalo Street Extension. A requirement, you do show a typical section for asphalt driveway, so.
Yeah.
In your details.
Yep.
So that's just applying to the apron, so. Okay, not
Correct. I don't think you have any.
At this time, that's correct.
The apron has to go in. The rest of it is at your convenience. So. When the pocketbook allows it. Do you need
Yes, strategic farmland, that's the one, so the water will.
okay. Do you want
Yeah,
to announce it?
so this is in the strategic farmland protection overlay district, which means water will be town water approval. Expansion of a connection to the water.
Yeah, the water, so my recollection is water district goes on the back of the property.
Water district currently.
I do plan on.
No.
That's on the.
It's on the other side,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so. We could just lump
Well,
that.
besides
We'll
Slide
add that
two,
to the
Town
condition.
highway, town attorney, and town board.
This may actually be the first one since we've adopted the new overlay district.
I think it is.
Is that something that we need to apply for, or is the town?
We'll take it,
Okay.
yeah.
You did provide elevations of the home. It's a very nice looking home, as you said. How are you making out with, you're gonna have to get a permit from NIDOT to encroach in the right of way down to 520, right?
For there are
For the water.
probably, unless. I don't know if the town makes the tap and brings it to the right of way line.
I think so.
Yes, and the town would be.
I didn't put the permit on it, because I was thinking that that's how it was being done, but.
We don't have to cross, we don't have to cross the road.
Right.
No, the water's on the same
Yeah.
side, but I think you're into the right of way, whether NIDOT
If the
requires a
town does
permit.
the tapping, then you wouldn't be getting the permit.
Okay, board, anything else? Public, I will open it up to the public if someone would like to address the board regarding this application. Not, we're ready to move. Okay, again, we're dealing with a type 2 seeker, site plan approval. Let's put them together under one motion.
I will make a motion to bundle the seeker type 2 action and the single stage site plan approval for 23-015 at undisclosed address under 520. On the site plan approval, Lance, if you could correct me, how many?
I have a total of
Conditions.
10 conditions, 9 being the addition, which is prior to issuance of the building permit, town highway and water superintendent, town attorney, and the town board of the approved out of water districts. And then the 10th one was the site plans will be revised to provide the square footage note of the pole barn. And then I also added condition number 5 to add in New York State DOH.
I'll second. Motion second, this includes the parkland fee as a condition. Okay, motion second, further discussion. Not all in favor.
Aye.
Opposed? I hear none. Motion carries. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda. Next on our agenda, we have two actions to be considered by the board regarding Sunset Ridge, Lakewood Custom Homes. Let's do, if it's all right with you, Sal, the extension first.
Yeah, absolutely.
The applicant is requesting a second 90-day extension. He's provided the documentation as to why he's requesting the extension. And if you'd like to explain that in your own words, the board, here you go.
Sure thing. Sal Lee Chardello, attorney for applicant. So we came in, I believe it was November 11th, the last time around for a 90-day extension. While we ironed out a few outstanding things, I think the analogy I use is that we were about 90% about the 10-yard line, almost there. I think now we're at the 1-yard line. The main thing holding this up right now is the what I call the winter maintenance agreement, which was the agreement between the town of Canandaigua, highway superintendent, and the town of Hopewell highway superintendent for the provision of snow removal services for that section of the upper road in sections 1 and 2 of this project. My understanding is that we've been making good progress on that. So we submitted that back in November 14th, I think is when we handed it over to the town. Then town attorney needed time to review that, and also Jim Fletcher needed to make time to meet with Matt Curran to discuss that. I understand that they did have a few minor tweaks just to some verbiage, but nothing substantial. And that will be buttoned up hopefully within the next week or so. So that's why we need this extension now, to allow a little bit more time to get that squared away. Like I said, we submitted that back in November, and it was out of our hands, but in the process, while the town was doing what they needed to do, we chewed through our whole previous extension. And, so that's why this one's necessary. I can tell the board they've been working diligently.
2 towns, 2 attorneys.
And
2
we're,
hours of bids.
what was the highway superintendent seemed to agree on how it's to occur. Then it's just a matter of the 2 town boards to approve the agreement.
I've already looked at it, I'm fine with it. Jim's close. Make that recommendation at the town board.
With the
It's obviously
changes.
up to, it's obviously up to the town board, but. Don't see a reason why they have a problem with it.
Would that be-
Second party that's out of our control. We hope so.
Yeah,
They're agreed to
I can't speak for Hopewell, but I would imagine like Canandaigua, they'll be placed onto an appropriate town board agenda, and then go through that review process with their board.
And as far as all the technical stuff involved, the other conditions, I think they were either met previously or.
Correct. One of the last things that we were waiting for the town was to get to that review. Again, typically on a preliminary plan, this magnitude, there's stormwater elements that we have to review and approve, because we're approving it basically for the entire project. You're sizing and staying. Typically, we don't get that type of information until final, because it's a preliminary overall. That information has to be provided as part of preliminary. So working with Brendan Mark's team, and they're patient with us and got through the review, and I believe we're at a point now where everybody's comfortable moving forward with approval of the preliminary plans, meeting our signatures, assuming these conditions get met, one of which is the maintenance agreement.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with the progress that's been made and willing to grant a second and hopefully final line?
I just want to confirm it'll go to Canandaigua Town Board, it'll go to Hopewell Town Board. Both have to approve before then next we can start the next steps here. And so then.
Not you, you won't start the next.
Not, not give me a shovel, but no, the
No,
applicant, yes,
correct.
so they can
Yeah, one
progress
of the
into-
conditions of preliminary overall approval was getting the maintenance agreement approved and filed. that is going through the process. That's what's hanging us up from
Yeah.
signing the plans, which I believe is a condition preventing us from granting approval
Right,
of final.
okay,
So being that this condition, this request for an extension would allow them the
Yeah.
90 days to get the signatures on the preliminary plans, assuming both townships approve the maintenance agreement, then we would be in a position to move forward with approval at a time that's appropriate with the board.
do you
Yes.
think it'll happen within that 90-day period likelihood?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
I mean, I think it's gotta go before the board and.
Yeah.
You know, it may take a meeting or two with the town board to go through. I don't know what the process is.
It definitely can happen. in that
Right.
timeframe,
Right,
And I don't see.
They would be in a public forum.
Did
Do you have a question, Anita?
Yeah, which two entities are we talking about finding?
Town of Hopewell
Oh,
and a
okay.
town of Canada.
All right, thank you very much.
And while the clock is running on this extension, I think to keep this process moving, we will consider the application that's
Mhm.
before the board tonight. At least get that rolling, that we can get well into that with the possibility that that would be ready for some sort of action by the time preliminary plan is signed. So we're going to keep
Yeah.
the final plan moving while the preliminary plan is getting the final steps taken care of. So anybody else from the board, any issues with extension? Let's act on that. I'll accept a motion for the 90-day extension.
I move that we approve the 90-day extension. Now, is it June 9th? Is that the correct date?
That's the date that I came up with, yes.
Okay. For CPN 22012.
I'll second.
Okay, for the discussion. Not all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so as I said, the next item on the agenda is the CPN 23-017, Marks Engineering, representing properties of the Finger Lakes LLC, owners of property at 3535 State Route 364, requesting a two-stage site approval. Is that a site approval or subdivision? This is the final.
I think the town manager has something to say about public roads, the town law. Can you give us a summary?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure before you consider that, right? So the one thing is, so local law 8 of 2022, which was adopted by the town board. But it was late in the year 2022, actually changed the town code relative to subdivisions and specifically public roads when 4 or more lots exist, right? So I just want to make sure that we are meeting that law since the building permit is not complete. That law is now applicable. These would need to be public roads.
Are there?
I believe they are public roads.
Okay, I just want to.
Yeah, there's two private drives, but the lot,
2 or 3 of them.
yeah.
They only
they
serve
have
the right to
small-
homes.
Yeah, they're fine.
So
They are public.
Up top, we have, that's all public here. This is section 1 and 2. That's all we're asking the board to consider for final now. Up top here, this is the road that in the future date will need, Hopewell to maintain, as we're talking about the winter maintenance agreement. And then there is a small private road right here for Peace.
So
Right, those 3 lots and then those.
right, so that may still be a problem for you. Because what the law says is anytime you're subdividing 4 or more parcels, the roads have to be serviced by a publicly dedicated road.
So the 2 private roads is 1 year.
So that's
Subdividing or creating?
Yes.
Creating.
Each of these public private roads will get 3 lots. Not necessarily.
So I would just encourage you guys to go back and make sure that it's in compliance with that. And I don't know, and I apologize for bringing it up at the meeting, but as I'm sitting there listening, I was like, wait, the law changed. And so it specifically relates to subdivision of land when there are 4 or more parcels, the homes have to be serviced by a public road.
Just so, and I don't have it in front of me, and I don't, not gonna pretend to give an interpretation, but it's what you're saying. That because they're subdividing 14 lots or 15 lots.
Right.
No houses can have private roads, even if it's just 2 houses on the private road.
Right, so it actually, the law goes into detail, and that's, I just want to make sure we're, I'm not saying that you have to redesign it, but I just want to make sure everything's being accounted for, because it does give a provision for the planning board to grant a waiver, provided that the roads are constructed within the site design development criteria, and then spells all that out. So I just want to make sure that we're catching and checking all the boxes. Okay. So I'll just read it here. Subdivision of land resulting in the creation of 4 more parcels along the right of way shall constitute a major subdivision and shall only be authorized with improvements to create a public right of way pursuant to the site design development criteria.
Well, they were still creating a public right of way here, right?
As long as, I think that's the only thing, I just want to make sure that
Right.
all of these are public right of ways.
So I didn't hear any, it was really quick, and I just heard it now, but I didn't hear anything that says that each dwelling or each lot must be served by the public right of way, just that the public right of way. is
So the
created.
definition of public right of way is land owned by public agencies for use as a street or other public purpose. So the roads, the right of ways would have to be owned by the town of Kennebec.
Why don't you give me a call tomorrow, the day after would be better, and we'll work through sentence by sentence and figure it out.
Sure thing.
Let's be clear, final phase 1 as shown does not include a private drive
That's correct.
for these, for
Oh,
first floor
yes.
15, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, just these acres there.
That's
Well,
what we're saying.
Yeah.
We're doing these.
Yeah.
We're talking about section 1, right?
Yeah.
It's 10 lots, right? And then
Yes.
the road,
Sorry, the numbers were.
the road and the 10 lots.
Because I saw like lot 15. but it's-
Yeah, I said the
Yeah,
same thing.
It could be an issue with the overall plan, where you have to change them. In my humble opinion, I would interpret it that if you have 4 lots on a private road, or a road like we have around this town, that road would have to be a public road. 3 lots, you're allowed to share a drive. That was my humble interpretation, so. But if you're doing a whole, if you consider the whole subdivision, 30-some lots, that's another. Well, we'll leave it to our attorney.
Yeah, well, I just.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I do want to go ahead with, starting a review of phase 1, section 1, whatever you want to call it, that area that's not shaded, and talk a little bit about what you're doing and some questions that I have and the rest of the board may have, and maybe get well into the review of this thing tonight, and then we continue it and bring it back next meeting and keep moving it forward, knowing that we've got that preliminary approval that you've got to get completed before we can give a final approval on a section. So why don't Brennan, if you want to go over your design?
Yeah, the section 1 is the first 10 lots as you enter the site from East Lake Road, including the road and the cul-de-sac. Everything else shaded here is section 2, 3, and 4 up the hill that we're not asking for final subdivision approval on. So we're requesting the first 10 lots as you enter from East Lake Road and the road in its entirety. That's the request. We've gone through the detail, we've gone through the stormwater, gone through the design. The stormwater pond is, these 2 stormwater facilities are independent of each other. So this stormwater facility will be developed under section 1, and it will handle all the flows from section 1 and future section 2.
Brennan, you're considering the stormwater collection on a lot, they only kind of 9 houses, 9 lots. Am I missing one?
That is the 10th lot.
That's-
It's
The
nine.
10th lot is the
HOA.
pond.
Yes.
Okay.
So The stormwater pond will be sufficiently sized for those 9 lots and actually more, so we're including its size for.
You're right. And you told us last time that would be like first built, first made.
Yes, the
Schedule.
construction sequence requires establishing of a sediment trap, which is going to be in place of the stormwater pond to start.
Brennan, can you speak a little bit about the offsite runoff that's coming down and then routing around?
Yeah, so there is drainage coming down the hill on the south parcel that is getting collected by a open ditch, a storm culvert crossing the road, another open ditch that continues around and diverts it around the stormwater facility. So that flow is completely diverted through the site, unaffected by our development.
And the open ditch was mainly due to correspondences with Army Corps, is that correct?
Yes, correct. The Army Corps has taken jurisdiction of that ditch, classified it as an intermittent ditch, not a stream, not a creek, but they have taken jurisdiction of that, and that way we are permitting that through the Army Corps, the realignment in the parcels section of enclosure, which is where we're putting pulmonary.
Originally, it was gonna be a full road through.
Yeah, that was one of the objections from the Army Corps, is they would like to see open drainage. They don't want to see closed drainage because it promotes ecology and biology. So it's the section that is piped starts at lot 18 and pipes underneath the proposed road, and then daylights on lot 3.
And the ditch and the pipes all subject to an easement.
Yes, that'll be under our drainage.
The maintenance of the open ditch, would that be part of the HOA? The banks,
We
meet the street, the bed.
be under the corner of the drainage easement, so
Right.
there's.
So, yeah, the portion that runs underneath the road, I don't mean to interrupt you. The portion
no, that
runs
would
underneath
be
the road
public.
would be
Yeah,
Jim,
Yeah.
and then from there out, typically that has been outside of the town's control. And owned by-
Make sure there's someone in control.
Yeah, so the way that the HOA is written, the HOA is responsible for all the stormwater management facilities and so I believe this would be incorporated in part of that. And then to that end, too, the Corps asked us, well, informally, but I imagine we'll get a formal request soon to include in that list of easements that we submitted a while back, to just include one line in there about, not interfering with the pond, basically, so someone doesn't, try to fill it in or something, that they are made aware of that. So we'll anticipate we'll be adding some language to that, just so I want to flag.
Yeah, I'll feel the same way apply to the ditch, because you wouldn't want somebody pulling the ditch in because they want more room for their bed.
Right.
Okay, this is a 22-foot wide cartway with the 2.5-foot gutters. Side, which is in compliance with our standards. It's got sidewalk on the south side. Right on.
you can flip down, next plan. That's the easement plan. If you want me to know, I can, this is the drainage up there. Am I hitting something here?
No, it was not.
Okay. This is the drainage way that comes through, keep going down. I think the question was,
I was just trying to do this.
yeah, I should think the site plans. Oh, actually, this is utility. No, this is utility. Too close.
Here, do you wanna?
Yeah.
It's hard to, a little funky right now.
Bill Grove's drawings had all that, right? It's very easy to see.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Single
on one
lots,
page.
single lots, site plan versus the subdivision. These are. Feel like that's still too big, sorry. It's just not.
Well,
Why don't you tell us?
yeah, I was just a.
Yeah, sidewalk, there is a sidewalk, it's right there.
There it
Before it
is.
goes, it's right here.
It's right there, it's right there.
And it ends at the cul-de-sac, Brendan, is that?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, we had asked for and you provided a sidewalk easement out on 364. How about the construction of sidewalks 364? Is that
That was included in the preliminary conditions of approval.
Okay.
The right easement. on 364.
right? Yep, yep. The easement is shown. Yep.
And we have, so we have the sidewalk stopping here, I guess. Let's see what the board has to say about that.
Well,
It would be great to have you put the sidewalk.
yeah, I know we did it out at Bristol Street. Even though right now it's a sidewalk that sort of would not be used, but it is part of a long-term plan that the county, excuse me, the state, not the county, has for that road.
Okay.
To eventually tie it in, so that'd be something we could ask for. Street lighting, you have the one street light there at the intersection. How does the board feel about street lights in the rest of the project? Were you going to propose like individual pole lights out at the driveway for the?
That's correct.
I think that's
Each
what
house
it
is
said,
an
yeah.
individual.
That would be adequate.
So rather than having a street light to be owned and maintained by the town, with the individual full lights out, like the carriage lamp out at the end of the driveway, is that,
It's adequate. I think it's adequate.
I think would be not as, it'd be more dark sky compliant,
Right.
assuming they have the correct kind of luminaire.
Right.
This is the one street light.
Mhm.
Grab it.
But none in the cul-de-sac, Brendan? correct?
Not in the cul-de-sac, no,
Other than
other than individual households.
Do you have a monument up there or anything?
As far as a sign, yes.
We've also discussed the Welcome to Canada Road sign.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you guys
Yeah.
decide on a location?
We,
I know there's a few proposed ones.
I think, well, we would explore either the south or the north, but I think we would prefer actually the south side.
We have an easement shown for that. too,
Yeah,
right?
we did,
Yes.
yeah.
Or at least.
Well, that's it, the
require
north.
an easement.
Shauna, what
Did
is,
we have
what,
it at the north side?
That's where it is.
Okay.
That's where it's shown.
what is it, Shauna? Welcome to the town. It's
yeah.
not the digital one, it's just
No, not a digital sign,
Well,
no.
it's like one in the north.
While you're on that utility.
Billboard.
plan, yeah,
There's a utility plan there, yes.
that doesn't show a lot.
I
That's,
guess.
that
Or
actually.
it shows,
I
it
follow.
shows
Thank
your
you.
sort of names. The one that shows the laterals,
Yes.
man, you've got laterals crossing the property lines.
Yeah,
It is one funky design.
you're just talking about these laterals coming up here. Off the sewer line at this extra section.
You got that
crossing the
house going
service too.
across, it's one of the lot, that lot, and then you've got lot 2 going back into the backyard of lot 4, the sewer. Well, I'd sure like to look at the design of the sewer. I realize the street, it's got a, with that curved configuration, you'd have a lot of manholes if you try to follow the street line, but give them a, if you can pull up the plan that shows the laterals.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to go.
I think it's the files.
Oh,
Huge,
look,
I
there you
think
go.
that's.
There you go.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
See all those green feeds that are going.
So partially, this is one of the reasons why is because we have this
Yeah.
existing sanitary that crosses through the site. So we want to connect to that. So yeah, we do have a lateral from this lot at 19 that connects to the existing sanitary through the backyard. And then we've got this curve here that we have to serve 15 and 16 through laterals that cross the public highway. So there will be some easements that cross through these public private lots. Yes.
Well, Again, it's very important. That you probably have about 4 or 5 of them.
I got 3, 1, 2, 3.
Might have one up top too. One front or one too.
I think about one.
Yep,
Yeah,
there you go.
you do have 3 or 4, so. Yeah, so this is connected to the existing sanitary. If we didn't have this sanitary that snakes through the site,
Yep.
it would be more, more conducive to time into the proposal.
I think we're trying to keep down the amount of pipe we have to install in the ground too, just to.
Well, at pipe and manhole, you'd have to have a manhole at every bend. So if you followed the actual curve, you'd be manhole, stretch of pipe, manhole, stretch of pipe, manhole, stretch of pipe. And I'm sure the county wouldn't appreciate that either, because it's that much more they have to maintain as far as sanitary sewer manholes. Well, look at it, think about it. What is it?
Ultimately, the county sewer district is gonna have to review and approve it as
They
well.
get in,
We
get
look at
into
the
laterals?
separation, we look at the separation from town facilities and stuff like that. But ultimately, again, they look, like the sewer district is the one's gonna review and approve. Ultimately,
Has the sewer district looked at your plan here?
Yes, yes.
You're working with.
They're actually, county's actually excited for us to start working on this project. It's in sewer up to 18.
But that's not, to be clear, that's not part of this.
It's not part of this.
I'm just quickly gonna go over some of the notes I have. Private discussion, but we're done with seeker, because that was done with preliminary. MRB is working on a review for this, right? And we think you might have it done next week or so.
Well, we'll try to have it done by the end of this week if possible. It's just, we got a later start trying to wrap up the preliminary.
And the wetlands resolution, that was part of the declaration, and you had said that the Corps, but you did have a small patch of wetlands there, and that came up in the discussions on the preliminary as to how that would be resolved.
Yeah, we don't have final permit from the Army Corps yet.
Okay, so you're working on that. We talked about the need for, you there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm looking at the map.
Just a clarification, we went through obviously a public hearing for the preliminary overall.
Yes,
Do we have to treat this as a public hearing for the final phase?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Just wanted to check to make sure. Are there any trails in this section at all?
Not of this.
Nothing at all, okay, it's the only way you did section 2. Okay. So we don't have to worry about trail surfaces. How you making out with Department of Transportation on your permit for the intersection?
We've submitted to them. We have not, we do not have a permit in place yet for that.
Sewer, and you're working with Jim Fletcher on the water? You're working with Jim on the water?
Yes, yeah, yes. He's reviewed.
Do we have any pavement markings, crosswalks? Not in this phase of this. We have it.
We would add a crosswalk if we need sidewalk across the entrance.
So NIDOT will probably require to show that.
Yes.
Talked about sidewalks on 364. Your construction, how do you, I know there's a lot of trees on the property and there's a lot of trees that probably can come down. How do you propose to address the issue of surgically removing trees so you don't take out any more trees you have to?
Was that mostly to do with the upper sections of the Cedar View shed?
Well, I know you get, what, about 60 feet off the road and you're into the woods. And a lot of those trees are pretty sad. I mean,
There's not anything that's great
there's not a
value.
bit. Well, I think we discussed in the preliminary approval that there would be some consideration as to how the trees would be cleared for the individual lots. The lots themselves were not requiring site plans, right? Not down here.
Not in
Not
this
in the
part,
first
there are
area.
It's
some.
up on the view shed.
upper.
Okay, so we're not looking at individual site plans, but I think we'd ask you to just, if there are trees that have some sort of value, that, somehow, that- how you do that, I don't know.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Well, you're gonna go in, you're gonna cut the road, so we know where,
Right,
yeah.
obviously.
So maybe when the road's cut,
Any color you see on there, like, we're gonna have to clear strips out, so we can dig. And I know I brought this up a long time ago too, this whole site back in the fifties or sixties, it used to all be a farm, so. Whatever's there, there's not much that,
it's all volunteer.
right, there's nothing that's real old growth there, it's a lot of just scrub brush. But, I think, and I'd have to ask them, but I don't see any reason why we would need to clear.
So you're not doing a clear cut.
Put the utilities in.
Yeah, I think the concern was, you wouldn't go into a clear cut,
Right.
take it all down. I think it would be more observable once the road is cut. Because then you can go in and actually see where lots are located, and you see trees on the lots that have some sort of value that can maybe be worked around if they're not in the footprint of the building.
We are proposing a landscape plan with street trees. Trying to. So we will put trees of
Yeah, I remember
quality
that. Here it is.
back in. Several.
So they're red oak.
Sorry. So, I guess the answer is that, we're removing a lot of trees of non-significance and adding quality landscaping to it.
Kim, they're coming to see you next month, right? This application, ECB.
Yes, it's being referred to.
Yeah.
We'll look at it then.
So I mean, you'll be looking at the size, species, location. Sure. They're all native.
Yes.
All your downspouts, they're going on the splash pad.
Disconnected, yes.
You're pretty confident the first floor elevations are pretty well set,
Yes.
as you know.
Yes.
If you vary,
Yes.
you have to come back and see us. We don't want to see, we love seeing you guys, but
And the protocol of the town that they've moving forward is setting those elevations again compliance with the code enforcement officer prior to moving forward. So
that's right.
we've been, I believe that has been somewhat self-corrected since we've had the abundance of projects.
So, just your some deep comments, reading for.
Is he not?
Yeah. So no further seeker.
Person not-
The PNR fee will apply. Have a wetlands issue been resolved? You said yes. Public hearing, no. IDOT permit you're working on. Street light we talked about. Pedestrian facilities. Talked about 364. You gotta come up with a street name that's acceptable to the town, right? We working on that?
I know a while back, we were talking about
Some
some historically significant names we could use and, you guys approve it, I don't care what you call
Finch Way?
it. There you go.
I'm not. And the ECB's gonna talk about it. Sweet. Okay, board members, anything else that you want to talk about tonight?
I have one more point of reference, just for the record. It's been said before, I just want to put it out here again, your traffic study stated you didn't need to do anything at the street. There's no additional lanes needed or light or anything. That's it. Yep.
Yeah, that was the case even when we were proposing all the townhomes even.
Right.
And, now we're
It
just
was
talking
minor,
about-
it was minimal.
It was like right
Right
at
on.
the threshold
Yep.
where it was like almost, and I mean, now we're just talking about a few single things.
Yep. So nothing additional.
Well, I guess you get some third-party approvals to get. And what else is in here? You're gonna look at that lateral configuration or talk it over with the county service district. Anything else? You want to, any homework assignments for these guys?
I have something else I just wanted to add. I don't want to like throw a wrench in any of the procedures we need to follow. But to the extent that we're gonna hold up phase one, section one on the maintenance agreement for 3 and 4, I just, with the sections 3 and 4, we're talking, it's probably gonna be at least 3 years down the road till that road even goes in. It just doesn't seem rational to hold up development of these lower sections for this maintenance agreements for 3 and 4. If you guys wanted that to hold up final approval in sections 3 and 4, absolutely. Because we know why build the road if we don't know who's gonna take care of it, but we're so far away from even beginning to put that road in up there. And it's like, we're gonna hold this up for something that's down, years down the road. It just, I personally don't believe it's necessary. I do understand the way the condition was written. When we got our preliminary approval, it is necessary, but I'd like this board to consider, going forward with final for section 1 here. Even if, that winter maintenance agreement for that section 3 and 4 is not adopted by both towns. Because I definitely could see that going into a month or two. Just, the way towns work, especially with Hopewell too, at it, so.
Well, I hear what you're saying. Understand. I guess it all comes down to what kind of confidence this board has regarding that last step. 1 yard that you gotta go to get it across the line will occur. And maybe in the coming 2 weeks, we'll know more.
Yeah, I don't think that's actually gonna be an issue for you, Sal. But it's definitely something I think we can talk about as we proceed here. When that condition was imposed, the distance was a mile. Now we're on the 1 yard line. So I think that, we can a lot closer now than we're when that condition was imposed.
Yeah,
That's a good thing.
Right, I think we had like 27 conditions or something on
Yeah.
the preliminary, there's a lot, so.
We've had more before.
Really?
No.
You're not the champions.
So the grass isn't always greener?
You're not the champions. Okay, we'll certainly consider that. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, we'll have more confidence. It's gonna have, I guess, the only uncontrollable things in town of Hopewell is how they're gonna react. And if everything seems to be moving in the right direction, certainly, I can't speak for our board, but I mean.
I think they're gonna probably want to submit to their attorney too. Their attorney is Jeff Graff. So we'll see.
Are we in a chicken and egg situation here?
I don't know, I don't know, I mean, maybe Matt's current opinion is enough for the town board to move forward. I don't know how the town of Hopewell will operate and review that, but.
Yeah.
That is.
Jeff's not gonna like it. They're gonna have some issues, is my guess.
Which is more of a reason than to not make this final on 1 and 2 contingent on that. And I mean, I don't want to be like they always teach us to prepare for worst case scenarios in law school and stuff. And hopefully none of this happens, but I mean, there is a hypothetical where sections 3 and 4 don't even get built. Like, if the housing market tanks, and that might all just stay trees if this project isn't a commercial success. So I just don't want to see this get held up on top. The hypothetical road that should be going in a few years, but might not.
You got, this section is related to the preliminary overall. The preliminary overall includes section 3 and 4. So that's the connection.
That's something we can talk about when we get sure.
Yeah.
And I guess we've got to do some research on that, the law that Doug brought up.
I agree.
whether it applies or does it, or
applies and
affects the outcome. Okay. So I guess we move this, continue it. Does the board have anything else that they'd like to see from the applicant? I was hoping to send them away with a shopping list. Things we'd like to see addressed. And it sounds like getting close.
Yeah.
Mark, how you feeling? I feel good. You feel good? Scott,
Well,
you're
Mark's
okay?
gotta do something for us.
Chuck's giving you enough to work on.
Amanda, you're okay? Nothing else you want to add? Okay, well then, I think the record shows what has to be done, and with that, let's do a continuation resolution. Got to move this to the next meeting? Yeah, we can do it.
Well, your next meeting is April 11th.
April 11th.
April 11 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 agenda items on this before.
Okay, and this is a continuation of existing application.
I think we just clear it up. It'd be easy.
So we want to make a motion regarding a continuation.
We're doing it to the 11th or the
Yeah,
25th?
that's isn't it?
Yeah.
Which meeting,
Which date?
11th or the 25th?
I think we were going to try to shoot for the 11th.
I did not have that on.
Yeah, we have-
So I will move that we continue the application of CPN 23017 to the April 11th planning board meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is that a second?
Does that
Amanda?
work
Yes.
for you guys that day?
Yeah, I mean, if that day works for me, I don't know. if you- for you.
Everything submitted.
2 weeks, you guys are just the biggest thing. is-
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, we can work that out.
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing, we're not gonna get that approved by both municipalities
No.
by the 11th, so.
Well, I guess, I'm sorry. I guess the question that I have from the board is, if you're hoping to see revised plans before you addressing some of these conditions, that comes back to you as whether or not that's gonna be able to be done by April 11th. If the goal is to get the maintenance bond agreement worked out, it isn't gonna be done by April 11th. So I don't know.
No.
I just trying to talk through what the goal is.
First of all, I don't see any major revisions to the plans that came out tonight, other than gonna look at the sanitary sewer, which is my hangup. So there's not a whole lot of plan revision. It's more the third party.
There'll be some stuff.
You got
when
NIDOT,
they're
you
just
got,
tightening it up
uh,
sequence wise, but I agree there is anything of substantial. concern
County.
from our end. But I
any
just want to make
progress you
sure I
can make
understood
on
what
that,
the
on that
goal.
front, as far as NIDOT permit your county sewer. Helpful. And I could see, should the board be inclined to give a approval, it would be conditional upon eventually getting the preliminary sign. So the final and the final would have a conditional approval, the preliminary has a conditional, and they all pending that winter maintenance agreement. And that happening, then signing the plan at the same time. Good plan.
But I think the amended preliminary approval prevents us from granting final site.
Yep, no, oh,
So you would have to amend the preliminary condition to allow,
I think it says before, the signatures.
if it says before signatures, then.
We can figure that out.
okay.
So,
I forgot. what
so
it
for
was.
my clarity, then what are we gonna hear on April 11th? We're not gonna have the highway agreement. I mean, negative, but it's 2 weeks away, so what are we
Well-
gonna be reviewing on the 11th? if
We're
it's
looking to have
motion?
something forwarded to you from the town members stating where this is in the process and.
That'd be helpful. Well, and also the issue of the private road. Hopefully between now and 11, or the answer on whether it applies or not.
Yep. It doesn't apply to section 1.
Right.
Correct.
Right, but it does apply to
The whole
overall,
thing.
yeah.
I'll have to take a look at the issue.
So you're saying, what are we gonna do on the 11th? And typically, we don't, hang on, man, just think of one thing that I can't be interested. Typically with NIDOT county, we make those conditions of approval of the plan. So we could do that. So it's not that you necessarily need the approval from IDOT. Have to be a
It'll be
condition.
conditional.
Angela, need.
Sounds like you got a full agenda on the 11th. And I don't think there's anything that's gonna change much
That's
between
what it is.
tonight and on the 11th. We could entertain approving this with the conditions that we look into the road, private drive.
That is a good solid try. Good try.
I mean,
I would expect that from Sal, but you just,
Yeah.
you just threw that right out
I
there.
thought he was gonna say move it to the 25th.
So did I.
and to be honest with you, I've been racking my head for the last 6 to 8 months, trying to figure out why this maintenance agreement has anything to do with Lakewood Custom Homes, when it really doesn't. Because it stands pretty much on its own. But that's the whole reason why we've been delayed and why we're looking for extensions and all that, and really, that's years down the road. And I just.
Let's get you on the 11th. And I'll give you an opinion on the private drive and the whether. Yeah, whether I think it's something that needs to hold up further progress on the
Give
11th.
any update?
How's that sound?
on
Does that sound good?
county?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we could amend that condition to just be conditions for sections 3 and 4.
We'll talk about it. You and I will talk about
And
it. Get it on the agenda for the 11th.
Okay, let's go to the 11th, Scott.
Okay,
What time?
so my
Morning.
motion stands.
Afternoon.
We have a motion and a second to continue discussion on this application until April 11th or April 11th meeting for discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. See you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
All right.
Everybody's. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you.
I think.
Okay, we have on our agenda a sketch plan review for Uptown Landing. Team here. Welcome. And I guess we're a little further on than we were many months ago when you came in with your initial sketch. And you've now done some hard lining and to the point, I think you want to make a formal, or you have made it.
Right, so we could have stopped things at PRC, reevaluated with the team, and they've have a new design that they want to show us.
So where are we in the form-based process? Are we at sketch? Are we at?
They're gonna come to back, they already made the application, but with the changes, they're gonna come back to PRC. And then we'll move forward to town board.
Okay, gentlemen.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Good evening, Don Masher from Capstone Real Estate. Jeff Cook from Cook Properties. Christian and Craig Jensen from CJS Architects. As Sean mentioned, we have been working for several months, 6 months, maybe longer, on our revisions, a lot of communications with staff at the town. Project has morphed / progressed, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Our first component, well, actually, this is an overall site plan, but the current project is first 3 buildings plus, which are residential, market rate residential, 3 stories tall.
Would you point this buildings out?
Go to the next slide.
You'll see.
Shows it the next slide.
I think you're gonna, that might help.
There we go, perfect. So phase one is the 6 buildings along what we're calling Uptown Boulevard. Another 20 townhomes along the park to kind of frame the perimeter.
Oh, you're good.
To frame the perimeter, the back of the parcel is the MH component of the project, and then the light gray shaded buildings here would be potential or future flex / office. Fred, you want to jump in on the
Yeah, I can
details
jump in a
here?
little bit, yeah, but, so I think some of the things that changed as we work with the town. Originally, there were some patio homes along the park, which were maybe not as consistent with the form-based code as the townhomes. So after looking at that and understanding a little bit more about what the town was looking for, we made the switch from the patio homes, which were one-story structures essentially, and a little more spread out, to this kind of townhome concept. We have some later slides you'll see when we get through the presentation that will show you what dealing with those look like. And then also with the MH housing, we had maybe a little bit more of a kind of undifferentiated kind of site plan that didn't really prioritize, you know, kind of front yards and kind of streetscapes. So we've developed a site plan now that has these little parks running through and with back alleys to service a lot of the garages. So we're putting a little more emphasis on the streetscape and the kind of sense of place that that area will have. It was a little bit more, I'm gonna say, generic before. There's still a variety here, you know, there's alleys that service some of the garages and other garages around the perimeter are serviced by the streets. And then there's little green spaces that tie in to the, you know, pedestrian circulation that brings you back to Uptown Boulevard. So there were some pretty substantial changes there. We didn't really make changes to the mixed use along Uptown Boulevard. I think that was working pretty well as far as everyone was concerned. We just developed those a little further. Those are the kind of the general highlights of changes.
No, it's good. I left out the mixed use component. So Uptown Boulevard still has the potential to develop office or retail on the first floor to activate the streetscape, apartments on floors 2 through 3, and then potentially loft apartments on the first floor, which could be with work.
Yeah, the first floor designed with really high ceiling heights and then mezzanines, so you can do like a kind of loft apartment in those, or you can do an office use. They'll work either way. The building, you know, is fully accessible in that regard, so we could work either way. Why don't we advance the slides a little bit, just to refresh them. So as Don said, 6 buildings along the first phase of Uptown Boulevard here. You know, 4 smaller and 2 larger. They're not all identical. There's one small building that repeats, and then the large building is essentially also a repeat. But because of the staggered nature of the placement of the buildings, it really is a really varied streetscape. As you look down, you'll see that in some of the conceptual views that we're going to provide. Parking is in the back. There is on-street parking along one side of Uptown Boulevard. We didn't want to make the street too wide, so it's just along the one side. And there's little green spaces in between the smaller mixed-use buildings, which have entrances obviously off the street, and then also some entrances off the park.
Gentlemen, can I get your names? I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, that's fine.
I'm not sure from Capstone Real Estate Development.
Okay,
And Craig Jensen from CJS Architects. So this is a conceptual view looking down Uptown Boulevard from the entry off of Fire Hall Road. So, you know, you kind of get a sense of how these look from there. There's a mix of masonry and other kind of, you know, cladding materials like panelized kind of a lot of glass. You know, we're going to show you that we don't really meet the transparency requirements in the form-based code, but we've got a lot of glass. I think it's totally appropriate. You know, we're not hitting numbers that the code has, but we're hitting some good numbers. So go to the next. Again, you know, kind of a varied streetscape. You know, these buildings are all a little different. The unit layouts in the first 2 buildings on the left there, the lighter one and the darker one, the unit layouts in those are essentially the same. But we're varying the facades, which creates an interesting variety. Whereas the third building down, which is one of the longer buildings, has some more
different unit types than the first two. We've got like a little bit of a kind of rain garden that goes between the public sidewalk and then, the private space up against the building. So that creates a little bit of a buffer for us, just between those two areas. If those storefronts were, some sort of office or retail use, then, you could change the planting. But if it's a residential use, there'll be a little bit of a buffer there, I think is good. So we're just developing a little bit of kind of screening. Street trees in that kind of, tree lawn between the sidewalk and. Same kind of shot, looking along one of the longer buildings. There's multiple entrances along the face of these buildings, both entrances, into, multiple entrances into the building. Next. Just another view looking back, you can see one of the little green spaces between the buildings. There, even on the left, that's a space. We have probably more of these than we need to see. We can come back. There's a couple of little like pentazines where the units pop above the third floor. It's not an actual fourth floor, it's just like a duplex unit up on those upper levels to give a little bit of variety to the kind of roofscape to make it a little more. See that again there. See some of the entrances down. Nice. Keep right going. Oh my God. How many is there, Christian? Is that the last one? Okay, go ahead, next one. So you can see in this, those are the patio homes that we had over on the right in an earlier iteration of the design. Those were what, weren't nearly as consistent maybe with what the town was looking for. And I think after we thought it out and understood a little bit more about the park and everything, I think we realized too that maybe it wasn't the best choice. So you'll see those go away. So go to the next. We'll probably move on to.
I know. Yeah.
We're essentially hitting the kind of mildew zone that the town's looking for in the form-based code, and in terms of our, frontage along the front of the lot, we meet those numbers. So in terms of, position of the building and length of the building relative to those lots and things, I think we're in compliance and feel good about what we're doing there. And then, we get into the transparency, this is a front elevation of one of the smaller buildings. And even though there's a lot of glass on this, and I think these are huge windows, scroll up just a little bit, you're missing the very bottom. There you go. If you go to the next image, you're going to see the transparency, which is going to tell you that we're not quite meeting numbers that you would like. So on the bottom, we're maybe around 60%, and at the top, a little less, but it's still a lot of glass. I mean, it's a lot of glass. We're counting, spandrels, between the first level windows and second level windows. So there's more transparency if you counted the linear feet than you count the square.
So I know at one point you mentioned that the possibility of the first floor being residential, while you're filling it in, does that transparency stay the same?
State does, we would just remove the storefront, cut the block down, add a sidewalk, change the landscape to previous.
Yeah. And the bedroom area for the residential use would be on the mezzanine, so it's kind of a little bit more sheltered and set back. It's not right out at the face of the building, so you kind of get a little bit off of that way. The section we'll see them. Go to the next one. Side of those buildings, again, I think a lot of glass. Again, not quite meet the numbers that the code calls for, but go to the next one. So that's our transparency there. Next. This is, again, same footprint, same floor plan, different facade, just again to vary it up and create some variety on the street. So it has different transparency numbers. I think this one will be a little higher, a little lower, but it's very close. So I'm going to go through it relatively quick. Most number.
again, we don't done the calculations here, but again, it's somewhere in the same range. Next. Side of that building, there's some mezzanines behind that solid wall, Christian.
Correct.
Mechanical space on the first floor, so it, reduces our ability to put some openings there, but this is actually, kind of butting up against another building in most cases, so it's not really on a street, it's the side of the building. And then this longer building, which has, a lot more variety and a lot of things going on, so it's a pretty, there's some projections, a little bit more like depth in the facade. Some of these facade pieces are proud of others, so you can see on the bottom. I think one of the form-based code ideas was that you got a longer building, you had some changes in the facade, the face of the building. You couldn't just go 200 feet all in one plane. So this is why this building, well, we would pay for it anyway, but in compliance with the code, we're stepping this thing in and out as we go down the street to create that, kind of a little bit more varied street front. And then, transparency numbers here, again, pretty consistent with what we were. Totally appropriate. If we go with more or less than this, I think the residential would be very difficult to insert on lower floors, and I think this is still totally workable with the commercial. So it's a good. Next. So there's that section that I had mentioned. So you can see, that lower level first floor with the mezzanine has a very high ceiling, so it's going to be a really spacious space if you have a commercial user. And if it's a residential user, you have that loft on the upper floor, which could be like a little office or a storage space if you were a commercial user, but for the residential user, it becomes the bedroom area. Or if you were to live and work, it's great because you could have your art gallery downstairs, and you could still be the artist living upstairs, as an example, like you work for a certain, kind of single, like sole proprietor type of uses, work for those types of uses. Next. What's the difference? Oh, back. Oh, it's the back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you okay, it is the back, because you got these slots where the entrances are. So from the parking lot side, you don't have as, prominent entrances into the corridors of the building. So those two ends are the entrances into the back of the building, which connect this here tower and over there. You can go to the next. Again, the brackets and windows were on the sides, but it's not as transparent. But again, this generally backs into, the fronts and other adjacent building. And transparencies here are relatively low, but it's not honest. And then we've got one other small building type. So there's one building, one of the small buildings repeats, the other one does not. So this is like the third version of the small building. Again, just a different variation. It creates some interest. This one's masonry all the way up with these slots and you see the lines there. Go to the next. Similar numbers as the next side of that building. You go to, and go to the next side. So some new material now, townhomes. So we've organized these in blocks of 4, and as Don said, there's 20 total, 16 facing the park, and then there's some on the right there. You can see that face, well, east essentially. The trick with these is, where is the front? So is the front the street or is the front the park? And so, they're a little schizophrenic in that regard. We've done other townhomes where, you pull the vehicles around the back and you park in the back to improve the streetscape. But if you did that here, you'd basically just be parking up against the park, which doesn't seem like a good idea. So, if we have a back that's really kind of back, then that's an easy decision. But in this case, I think that would be the wrong decision. So we didn't pull the cars around the back. The cars are in the front. So go to the next. So, now that's just zooming in, that's just setback, so that's not gonna play much. Go to the next. So you can see the floor plan here gives you just the general organization on the far left. You know, single car garage, pretty deep, but you know, single car garage based on the width of the unit, and a front door at grade, you know, no stoop, you're right at grade when you enter. But you immediately would go upstairs, whether you're in your garage or you're coming in the front door, immediately go up the stairs and you land in the living room on the second plan there. Which living room faces the park, kitchen is looking back toward the street. And then you circle back up that stair one more time. And 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, there's a powder room on the first floor. There's a little bit of an office on the first floor that might also be storage, or it could be like your exercise room or whatever you like. And you know, a fairly simple plan is like 20 feet wide. And 2 blocks of floor. So that's kind of how these things play out. Go to the next image. So, you know, fairly simple, you know, kind of very, not surprising in terms of how these townhouses look. You know, there's a question about, you know, what do you do about the garage doors, of course, and if you go to the next image, you know, you're gonna see garage doors are gonna be an element on that lowest floor, but we can, you know, put an awning over the front door and kind of, you know, dress up the front door and make the garage very simple, right? You have a simple door that's just a series of panels, and you basically kind of take the color on the facade and bring it right across the door. It can just be part of the siding, you know, in a sense. And then put large windows up on the upper floors, you know, with the view from, you know, kitchen and bedrooms and those types of things. I think, you know, it's the right decision overall. It doesn't meet the transparency requirements that the town would be looking for in general on that lower level, but that's not the living level. And I think given where it is on the site plan, it's not a private drive that is, you know, essentially behind that parking lot behind Uptown Boulevard. It makes sense to us. Go to the next view. So there's a straight on shot, you know, put a sidelight next to the door to kind of create a little bit of transparency. And then, you know, I think from the upper levels, you get a really good sense that these are transparent units, you know, and I think overall pretty welcoming. This doesn't show street trees, but there could certainly be street trees or other, you know, kind of plantings in between those curb cuts for the rear facade. Again, you know, we have a little balcony off of the living room that would be looking out over the park. And then, you know, window above that is the bedroom, window below is the office. There'd be some plantings, like some foundation plantings and things like that, probably just, you know, at the base of the building. But, you know, we've elected not to put any door off the back, because otherwise we're gonna end up with a lot of potentially stuffs there, you know, and I think if we can contain that to the balconies, it would be a little bit more controlled, and I think it'd make the park a little bit more of a park, and you won't feel like you're intruding on someone's, you know, yeah, I mean, it just seemed, you know, these are rental, they're not for sale, you know, and I think, you know, it gives us a little more control, and I think it might be better for the park to do it that way and kind of separate the private user on the second floor from the public user on otherwise you're gonna start wanting to put a fence or something that we don't want to do. And yeah, they'll enjoy your barbecue. So so that's how those kind of lay out. So go to the next. Transparency, you know, is, you know, better on the upper floors. Obviously, it's not good on the first floor, and you know, just being transparent, so to speak, about it. But go to there's not much we can do about that based on the spirit. So you can see, you know, we're essentially, if we do the side light, we get, you know, a little bit, but on the upper floor, we're next. Back, you know, again, I'm not sure if this is really the back or if it's the second front, depending on how you think about the park. So, you know, there's good transparency back here. especially in the upper floors, and I think the upper floors really counts here because the lower floor will be screened, I think, by other vegetation in the park. Next. Okay, that's fine, so, next. So the MH, as I was saying earlier, we've got this combination of alleys that service garages and then primary streets that are devoid of garages and really just about, the fronts to houses and front porches. Then we have other fronts that face these green spaces. And then in the perimeter, we have houses that actually are more, what you might expect, more typical with the street being front, no alley, right? So we got a few little views, conceptual views of this. Go ahead. So this is a little detail of where the sidewalk network is and how the sidewalk network would tie into these green spaces that these houses front on, and then also come down the primary roads for the houses that are on the primary roads versus on the park spaces or green spaces. And then the top of the page being the third kind of condition where the primary road is also the front of the house with the sidewalk. So there'd be interconnected network of sidewalk to all these things. Some houses would, like as you see in kind of the middle left, would only be off an alley, and their front door is really on the park. Others are kind of on a corner. Go to the next slide. So this is kind of how that lays out. The street at the very bottom is the primary street, and you can see there's an alley servicing garages, and then beyond that is a little park or parklet that some of the houses face onto. So everyone has a little bit of a different condition, and not everyone, but there's a variety of different conditions that are created, which creates some variety, which creates some interest, which I think makes it a little bit more of a unique place than everything was done exactly the same for every house. Next. So there's a primary road kind of streetscape. Some would have porches and some might not. Depending on the orientation of the house, the porch could be on the end or could be off the front to make it work either way. And houses, some of these houses are organized, long way to the street. Some are organized in short end to the street. Then this is also primary road. Primary road is sidewalks only on one side of the street, which we thought, in this area as opposed to like Uptown Boulevard, that seemed to make sense, just because it's more spread out. And then this is, houses along the park. There'd still be a sidewalk that would kind of differentiate a little bit of the somewhat private versus much more public areas, on the park side of the sidewalk. Next. And then alleys are alleys, as you pass by these garages, you get a view at somebody's, back of their house, and there'll be a little place, this will serve as a little entrance or something, but these are much more service oriented. And so there'll be multiple designs for the MH housing, and this was just one hypothetical or kind of prototypical kind of layout. So the transparency that we're going to hit on these will vary from unit to unit depending on how many different styles there are, and we haven't defined that yet. But this is somewhat typical of the amount of transparency that we're going to have on these houses. So if we go to the next image, you're going to see we're kind of in what is it, where we are with, and it's going to be in that anyway, for the most part. You go to the next. Just similar. Okay. And then if you had a, short facing, the street as opposed to the long side facing the street, you just get a little different result. But that's kind of what the next. What's Next. Other variation, go to the next. Also, same. There's a few examples here. These aren't necessarily the exact products that would be sold, but they're in keeping with what we're talking about. We put them out as examples here just to kind of give you a sense of, the kind of look and feel of these things with the porches and things. Go to the next scroll. There's 4 or 5 of these. So there could be a variety, as I said. Next. Next. Probably the last one. Maybe one more. Or one more. So that's essentially where we are. I think, the big changes from what people may have seen before really are the overall concept of the layout of the MH housing, making it more of a neighborhood, giving it variety and interest with alleys and green spaces and parks, some hierarchy. And then the townhomes, replacing the patio homes, which I think is a really good change. The mixed use maybe evolved a little bit, but the concept has remained pretty constant. So that will be a surprise. John, did I miss something, or maybe you've got a question?
No, I think the challenge, do you mind going back to the first or second slide?
Yeah, way up the end.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So the equity of these properties, the mixed use would be rentals. Townhomes would be rental. The MH would be
For sale.
for sale. You buy a lot, you're buying the lot, or you rent. You own the lot and they put their unit.
Right, that's
So that's. Kind of rental or.
yeah.
The challenge for us is, because Uptown Boulevard, new roads, new infrastructure, everything on that 100-acre site, kind of in the middle of everything, but off the beaten path at the same time. So our challenge is trying to blend all of the uses and provide enough product and variety. We're kind of creating a little sim. We're hoping to attract all those single proprietors, office users, the bakery, the accountants, the architects, the engineers, whoever it may be to the first floor use. The residents above, we're trying to bring in empty nesters, seniors, young professionals, you name it, to create that village so it flows, it feels. We don't want to put an apartment building in the middle of it, cross our fingers. We'll never get past phase 1 on Uptown Boulevard. So we've tried to phase in multiple uses and products for everyone, really, and keep it walkable and green.
When you say seniors on the second and third, are there elevators or no?
Yes, the 3-story buildings, all,
The long buildings all have
They
elevators.
have elevators, so
Right.
seniors
So
are accessible.
the majority of the units, and the first floor obviously is accessible, but yeah, those long buildings are elevator buildings, yeah. And then obviously, I mean,
In the townhomes, there's 2 parking per unit, garage and then driveway just enough for 1 vehicle. Is that-
yeah, so,
we do have some parking on the other side of the roadway.
yeah,
We're trying to use that, we're trying to create the green space, not intrude on it with parking. We don't want the headlights shining into everybody's, living rooms or offices on the first floor, but also, walking trails connecting to the park. Dog walking areas for everyone to exit out into from both.
Is there any type of common, like a clubhouse or anything like that for the manufactured portion? Are there any amenities for the manufactured?
hopefully,
Uptown Boulevard.
hopefully that'll be. Uptown
Hopefully
Boulevard.
they're over here.
Coffee shop will hopefully rent,
For the little parks that Craig was referring to, we're hoping those are gathering spaces, you know, we may have a fire pit and a pergola. We don't really want to have massive gathering areas, but little like intimate areas, so. You know, 5 or 6 residents after work are over there, glass of wine with their kids, whatever it may be. But we're hoping they walk and support the businesses on the first floor.
And we've got some little green spaces between the 2 small buildings on each side. They don't show up well on this plan, but those are planned to be like little outdoor seating areas that
Pocket parks.
they could be used, yeah, they're a pocket park, they could be used just by the residents. But they could grab, maybe a cup of coffee and, or from their house, they could just bring it down from there too, and just hang up there.
Playground, playground, anything like that.
No, we're so close to the park and some other amenities in the city. You know, we've got the lake within a mile maybe, so. No, we have not yet.
Well, there's many town parks.
Yeah,
Surrounding.
yeah, and I think, you know, depending on the demographics of phase 1, you know, there's always room to adjust for phase 2 to say. We need that, it's an amenity we think is gonna help, so if you go to the next slide, it still shows. You know, so even though we've got the concept for the rest of the site. We may learn something from phase 1, so Uptown Boulevard, maybe it needs a bigger pocket park, or maybe it needs, you know, some bigger commercial space. But at this point, you know, we're assuming we're making the right decisions now and we'll adjust a little bit.
Have you even touched other modes of transportation for other than sidewalks and?
So we looked at like a bike lane for Uptown Boulevard, but you know, we didn't think the traffic on there would be fast enough to really have a separated bike lane. We kind of like the idea of keeping it narrower, because every time we add another lane, it just gets wider and less kind of intimate. So it was really thought that we should just do a shared travel lane for bikes there. And you know, out of the MH portion, I think the same thing would hold true. You know, those should be very slow with their fly intersections, and it should be slow traffic. So you do a shared, and then the alleys again, you know, keep some traffic off the road and split it up. So
I'm an example of a shared traffic flow tonight. The scooter in the car.
oh, you are? Oh no. Oh, okay.
Last Monday.
Yeah, but that was in Europe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't,
Yeah, they're used to it.
doesn't the form-based code I know it encourages like bicycle,
Actually, it requires.
yeah,
Storage.
thank you.
Bicycle
Good
storage.
Oh, yeah, I know.
thanks.
We haven't made
Oh,
provisions.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll have.
But if it's encouraging the storage, then it's encouraging the usage,
And
I
if we
think
can't
is
do-
what you're getting at.
If we can do complete streets anywhere, it should be enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
On the transparency or the desire, according to form-based code is 80%.
I know. It's a very high number.
And that's something, I mean, we've seen that challenge already in a couple places, but at least on the first levels. Maybe if it's not actual transparency, then it's simulated transparency, something along those lines, because I think that would then encourage the businesses to come in as opposed to the residents.
I mean, I think we have,
There's not room for a whole lot.
that's right. I mean, you know, you can do the type of building like you see in some older Main Streets where the masonry on the floors above is above the entire glass, you know, these big plate glass windows, you know, that they would do in the 20s or 30s and 40s, I guess. But it, for us, I think it becomes a little bit too much of a fishbowl for the kind of potential residential use. It just gets a little too far.
And even the commercial use.
Yeah.
I don't envision having a 4,000 square foot office on the first floor.
Right.
One, we don't have parking, it's not the right location for them, but someone that needs 2,000 square, 1,500 square feet in one of the 2-story lofts that would live upstairs, and they have enough space for 2 or 3 visitors at a time, perfect. But they also need a little bit of privacy at that point. So we struggled with the glass and how to do that. It's just a tough mix with an urban streetscape. It's a design.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this was gonna be a retail store, like, you know, dress shop or even a hardware store or something, you want as much glass as you can get to sell your merchandise, but you know, for an accountant or an architect or, you know, other types of businesses, even an artist, I don't think it's the same merchandising type of approach, so when you can scroll ahead to one of those, you gotta scroll quite a bit to get one of those elevations, but we really try to get a lot of glass, and it's, you know, these are big windows, you can see, it's a lot of windows, but it's based on the way they want us to calculate, we're deducting for the spandrels also, right? 'Cause you gotta measure all the way up to, I'm not sure what the height is you measure to, but on the header. So, you know, we get a deduction for like even this band up here, you know, in our calculation, even though we've got, you know, on a linear foot basis, we've got a lot of glass, but, you know, this is solid, so that counts against us in the calculation, at least the way we.
Right, and that's where the, you know, your mezzanine floor is at that band.
At that
specific-
level, yeah, yeah.
that band specific.
So. But I understand your point, you know, we can look at it, but I think we're trying to strike a good balance that's still, I feel super transparent, you know, this is a little bit more. You know, and some of these are a little bit more like a factory style building, like almost like a warehouse type of building, as opposed to like, you know, a retail kind of building that you might see in some locations. They do have some masonry from down to the ground, which I think in some ways will make it more interesting. It'll make it, give it a little more variety. As you walk along the street, there'll be some interest and, you know, kind of variation as opposed to just glass. Not that that's a bad thing. If you've got different merchandise in every window, it'd be great. I don't know.
I really do appreciate the difference of facade on the shaping of the buildings. I think you did a nice
Yeah,
job.
and that, you know, that does come with, I think, some loss of transparency.
With the multi-story buildings, what's the estimated length on most of them?
So the short buildings are, you know,
You can scroll, it's on one of these.
yeah, I'm gonna say they're about 90 feet. And the long building is just over 200.
I know.
But the long building again is broken up by,
You got 80,
201.
82, so 82 on the smaller buildings.
and then 200 on the long building. But the long building has a lot of variation in terms of its frontage, you know, its plane or the plane of the street, so.
Are you thinking pedestrian through traffic on the 200?
Wait, guys, your lot width is 200, not your building.
Oh, sorry.
No, the length of the buildings. is
201 something. what's this say?
so one.
201.
She does not.
No,
Like-
no, no.
All right, we'll check that.
That's okay.
I can't.
Around.
So the building is longer than the lot.
So,
It's 201.
yeah.
The
but
lot width
there's a-
on the
there's a-
lot says
sorry,
200.
Trying to gauge you or reduce the building.
So you can't pass, you know, that building will be perceived as a series of buildings that are joined together. That's the way it's intended to kind of look, so it's almost like a street, you know, of buildings.
Just a question, pedestrian.
Pedestrian through traffic. And
So
the
we
longer
have,
buildings.
we have a main entrance on the back that connects to a common hallway with an elevator. That would be for residents only to provide security. But they would be able to park in the back, pass through the lobby and access the
Yeah, you could
street.
see that.
Anyone else that visits is either parking on the street or in the back and exit coming off the drive aisles. Or the green space between the two smaller buildings.
Right.
I think in this picture, you did a nice job of showing plantings of trees around the back parking lot. And another one, I noticed that there weren't a lot of plantings in the parking lot.
Yeah,
Our
that-
intent is to
yeah.
heavily landscape those areas.
On that note, did you refer to 134 on manufacturing housing on the town code? Because in manufacturing, our code, there's a 50-foot barrier all the way around that structure, those structures. I didn't see any of that. There's a
Yeah,
50-foot live barrier that's required in our town code.
No, we didn't go back to form-based code.
No,
But that-
Yeah,
town
so
code.
that- I wonder if that's,
So that's specific to mobile home parks in the county of Canada, and with this being form-based code, that actually won't apply. Because this is specific form-based code even for the manufactured housing component. So it all has to fall under the form-based code, not the
None
manufactured
of it.
housing.
So none of it will want to.
nothing in the MH section of the town code.
All
would
right,
apply.
well, that's good, because we were following the form-based code, and we'd have to look at.
Now, that's not to
And it's
say
a-
that you can't ask for something as part of all this.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's a good example though. The manufactured home code is for a very specific design and style and zone that the town wanted to create in 1982 when they created that. It has 50-foot buffer. They wanted each lot to have 50 feet on either side, and they wanted plantings in the front. You know, porches attached. Maybe that's not what the town wants anymore. I think the form-based code makes it clear that it's certainly not what they want.
Well, it's much better now that it's owned property, not leased property. So that being a solid structure on their land makes it basically answers our need for smaller houses, affordable housing.
Wait,
Yeah, but this
it's
is,
on their land.
it's on ours.
No, you said they own the land,
They own
No,
the building.
no, 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 no.
so they lease it.
And the entire, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the manufactured housing that is ground set is all on one parcel. Because we need to completely, that has to be separate for assessment purposes, so that'll be one giant parcel. But all that manufactured housing will be ground set on.
Correct.
Separate from the rest of this.
Right.
So I want to piggyback off of that with the MH housing will be one parcel. Because I took a little spiral in my head for a second on the alleyways, because there's not a lot, I mean, that I know of, and I'm sure they exist here in the town, but I'm like, oh, what does the code say? Okay, what does the form-based code say about the alleyway? And form-based code matches town code in that public or private, no more than 40 feet, and only secondary means of access to the property, to the structure. And I don't know if this might just be like a town question more than an applicant question, but the secondary means portion is where I'm kind of getting stuck into that, because in some of the MH houses, the alleyway is the only means, and like the main street doesn't.
Get all the way to the house.
Correct, right.
Designated it, the definition is from the street to the garage, 40 feet. We call it a secondary street, but it's still primary access to the garage. I think the code is saying they want no more than 40 feet, we're 25. 25 feet, so we
I
are.
figured it was gonna be a skinny one, but the
We just call
secondary
that
access
primary
was
secondary
the,
Because one's like a main.
my hiccup
loop.
that I wanted to.
Right, it's could be
talk
semantics,
through.
you know, we're
Right.
calling it an alley, the difference is from the primary street, but it's a primary access, it could
Correct.
qualify as a street if we call it secondary. street,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Private drive is the
Well-
way the town is identified.
You probably have to call it street, because you're gonna have street.
We're all going to be streets.
Yeah, they'll have
We just
it.
call it- It's just a,
Yeah.
it's only traveled by the owners on that street.
Right.
Or in.
Right.
It's just something new that I'm like
No,
trying
you're
to
right, we gotta
digest how
process
we
that too,
implement,
because,
so.
City code has alleyways defined.
Mhm.
So they can't divert.
There's actually a great example I'd encourage everyone to look at, Design Drive in the city of Canandaigua. On the backside of Design Drive, there are all these alleyways that service the garages, with Design Drive being the only street. And then you have these alleys accesses that none of those are named. So
Okay.
it's a great example for you just to see, it's
Yeah.
the same basic concept.
Okay.
Is there a width minimum on the alley though? I've seen 22 feet in one place.
Well, they're technically, they're gonna have to meet fire code for width, so most likely 20 feet or more
Yeah.
down the road, which I usually said 25 feet roughly. I don't know.
Yeah,
if it's
we're
a lot of feet, but-
Except for the ones that are fronting on them. Actually.
Major.
Yeah.
They don't need to be fire code up.
But the private drive to get access to the building, it depends on the distance from the
Yeah.
road. But typically, a private drive would be up to 20 foot width, if they're around some sort. And it all depends on where the water is. There's hydrants down that road that we have to have 26 feet or 24 feet. excuse me. And those locations.
Any other questions on the board? Town Boulevard, it's gonna parking on the, street parking on the other side.
One side, one side.
Oh, one side.
And it was again, just so that the street didn't get too wide, and kind of gives it a little bit more of a kind of pedestrian oriented feel. With the 26-foot wide, drive lane, or, I mean, wait, I think we're like 13 and 13, plus the 7 or 8 for the parking, so it starts to get a fair amount, and then you have tree lawn and the sidewalk, and then a little bit of setback. And we just didn't want to go anywhere.
As a common effect.
Yeah, I think it will.
Too wide and
Drive faster.
drive faster.
That's right.
With the rain gardens by the sidewalk, we just have to look at the elevation change. Obviously, you guys want it to be conveyed away from the sidewalk. Otherwise, you're gonna.
Yeah,
like
it's
your
gonna-
sidewalk, but we also don't want to create a scenario where there's a big drop off.
Yeah, I think Glenn's not here tonight, he was here.
He's not, I don't know if you remember this, but I actually misinterpreted that myself. We're not really rain gardens because they're landscape areas.
It's probably gonna be flushed with sidewalk, we'll have a
Correct.
certain soil material,
Yeah.
and you're probably gonna have some type of under drain, so the
Under-drainage.
water
Right.
runs in and sends it away.
Yeah, we started with something
Perfect.
lower, but.
We initially had like a moat.
Yeah.
We all loved it
Because-
first and then we went, what are we doing?
Seems logical.
Right.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Otherwise, I think the idea makes sense.
And how's your stormwater maintenance to be done for the overall, one facility, is that the
We have a
pond up there? Okay.
Yeah, one facility there, and then I believe we're connecting to
That's
the
Route
332 drainage district.
It's all in sorry, our civil engineers are not here.
Okay.
So it'll all have to connect into the town's drainage district, but, and obviously they'll pay the taxes for it, associated with that, will be tax for those.
Which means maintenance falls on the town.
Yes.
Thought about school bus stops or any other bus stops, or my third question was postal boxes. For the manufactured housing area, would be one or.
So that's a great question. We honestly didn't get that far. Sometimes it's kind of nice to have an individual at the MH because it, encourages people to go out and engage. See your neighbors when you're at the mailbox, wave while they're on the patio. Sometimes it becomes a bit of a logistical nightmare. We have not honestly gotten that far.
For the mixed use buildings, we do have mail rooms inside. Internal to the building, so the townhomes would be on, each unit. Yeah, I mean,
What we got with that?
This is some of the communal ones where they're by the bus, so then you gotta
Pull off
converge
for
with
the-
pull off.
Yeah,
right?
right.
That's what
Yeah.
it's-
That's exactly what I was thinking, but that's a large area, and that mailman is like, oh.
It'll be busy. If he can find his way out.
Amazon drivers are gonna have a bigger issue.
Well, that's a good
We
point.
may consider the parcel lockers if it's seamless. Yeah, this is a good example of that, where we may need one of the parts, where there's room for a pull off, email packages and locker 14, and they can pull up and enter a code. We don't have a mail room for the MH component, but we have space for it.
Bob, you mentioned school buses, but it also ties into something Mark said. I believe Canada School District will only service dedicated roads. Uptown Boulevard is a dedicated road, right? And I think one of the things, and Mark mentioned that making that a complete street, it's one of the things that you guys are just gonna have to go back and look at the town code relative to complete streets. Yeah. Because that'll be a town dedicated road, and the school bus will come there and it's gotta hit all those components.
And I appreciate the narrowness of the calming effect, but there's other ways to do that too. So whether it's medians, whether it's other controls that you actually place in the street, so it's just, you just run a risk of crowding when those narrow too, especially when it starts getting out high density.
So, snow removal will be by a private,
Yes.
we will only take care of that.
Yeah, Uptown Boulevard and the sidewalks, because this is all part of the Uptown Business Improvement District. So the town is actually responsible for the sidewalks along the dedicated road.
Under easement or district?
It's all part of the Uptown Business Improvement District, so it's all.
All manufactured housing.
So wider means lower cost. Wider means lower cost.
Have you looked at energy efficiency in your structures? Are you working toward that?
Yeah, we're certainly working towards that. We're not trying to certify for any particular standard like LEED or passive house, something like that, but yeah, I mean, even the, you know, New York State requirements are pretty good now. Yeah, I mean, we'll work with it.
Have you thought through all the charging stations on the larger buildings? There's some really nice incentives for those. Right?
For a while, we talked about all the facades around the building. How about the roof? Anything creative or unique about the roofs?
We've got some roof, varying roof heights on the larger buildings to kind of create a little bit of interest in just the
space.
Oh, but no, yeah, we have no roof decks or anything.
We're encouraging them to go to the green space. The problem with the roof deck is that the elevator needs to go up and need a second means of egress. How many, even if the buildings themselves aren't large enough to focus that, you know, to send, if we have 200 people in it, it'd be one thing. But with, you know, a smaller number of units in there, we're a little concerned that we'll have 400 people trying to sneak in. So we're overlooking parks, we have plenty of green space here to the lake. So everybody wants to be in.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we had these little pocket parks between the small buildings, so hopefully they'll be on the ground where they can, you know, use the commercial space.
We thought about.
Yeah, we had one at one time.
Something I'm sure the fire department will address is also collapse zones on the taller structures. As you look at the width of the roadways and parking lots and things, so they're gonna look for water access and the collapse zones.
I don't know if it would got mentioned, maybe you did lighting at all. Are we talking like street lighting?
We are.
Intersections or along the corridor?
Along the corridor, we'll have it throughout the site.
Yeah, for uptown, certainly we'll do.
Right.
We haven't talked about these streetlights in the MH. I don't know if that would be. What would be that? Would you put a couple lights out? Green space?
Just along the dedicated.
Yeah.
So not back into.
Not in that.
Area.
You see them typically like, you know, intersection areas for emergency purposes and so on, but whether anything else is required, I think that's really optional.
Okay.
For the.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate the update. I guess you're gonna do a CLD on this and then we're gonna take it to PRC.
So at this point, I think you've gotten the feedback from the planning board. You are more than welcome to take that feedback into account and come back with another sketch, or you can follow the process and submit an application for site plan approval. So I think the planning board.
They have the application in, it's been pending that.
Oh.
They reconfigured this plan. So the intent is to submit the formal site plan to PRC. And then planning board makes a recommendation to town board.
Yes, we have to determine was there any variances required, and if so, then go to the ZBA for the variance issue. So they
Have an existing site plan application. So you'll grant it, you will, render it to the,
Well,
but this is not site.
we have an existing site plan, correct? It does not match this. This has been it's been updated. So
Application would need to be updated.
we'll need to update the application, bring it back to PRC, do the same process of going through line by line in the code. We're gonna need transparency variances. We're gonna need to figure out how we're gonna do that. Then we build 2 line variances.
I mean, well, I guess if we have an application to variance, I think the best way to do the variance is per building.
Yeah. Building type.
No, I mean, I think, you know, you'd say this is the.
Say
Yeah,
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, building one can have a transparency of this percentage. I don't know.
Well, I think we should do by building type, house type for MH, right?
Right.
So if you put in A, it's
Might need to be
this,
a
B,
range.
it's, yeah.
Or, yeah, no less, no less than.
Right.
Yeah. Let's-
Does it still make sense to possibly do them before a PRC meeting so that the PRC meeting is more efficient from your perspective in terms of
Well, we could just
having
have
more
their own,
dialogue?
we could bring them their own PRC.
I was,
I just don't
PRC, I'd
think
like
it'll
to
take a
have be determined to what variances that are needed. Rather than spending PRC trying to figure out the variances.
Yeah, that seems like a zoning officer.
I think it's gonna take a while to go through everything and make sure it complies, so the thought process was, if there's an opportunity to meet with you guys prior to a PRC meeting, which is for the most part like the gateway to the planning board, it may make sense that way, it gives
We can do
staff
that,
the time
absolutely.
to
We
look
did
at
it
it.
before,
Yeah,
it would be the
right,
same
we do the same
process.
kind of thing.
Once we've ironed it out with staff, then hit a PRC meeting so that your application's ready to go, and we're simply blessing it. So
Didn't the issue of the lots come up? You know, there are like 3 lots involved. I know at the last PRC, it was a question whether they had to be merged or
We
crossing
need
lot
to
lines.
evaluate, so one of our challenges is going to be financing, because there are 2 or 3 different structures here. Structures of financing facilities, so we'll need something for like phase, this part of this component. And possibly the infrastructure, and then this would be a longer term. Different financing structure depending on how quickly the units sell. Or set. So we would probably look at, and this is just me without really thinking this one through and talking to Jeff, but potentially 1, 2, 3. And then the balance of the site would be 4 for phase 2. Just because, you know, the flex stuff is more isolated too, we'll have to come back if and when we have a user for that. Start that whole process for that component, but it would be could possibly be a different
So you're talking
lender.
like 4 lots, subdivided into 4 lots.
1, 2,
Well, it's already
4, so there
There's
wouldn't be
4
subdivided.
existing.
It would be doing.
So it'd be moving lot line.
We'd have to
Yeah,
shift
because right now I think there's lot lines.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Projects and are through areas.
this is what you, is phase 1.
Correct.
My only question, and I know we brought it up, and I think you may have solved it, but it's fire code compliance. When you have that private drive with one entrance, not being with the sprinklers, I'm assuming they're not being sprinkled. Yeah, therefore you're creating this pinch point where if something were to happen, it may need even a temporary secondary access going back to the main road to be fully compliant. I'm not saying it's not compliant, I'm saying that's obviously something that would probably need to be ironed out for you.
We discussed it, again, unfortunately, Glenn there. so-
Yeah, it might be totally sufficient as it is, it's one of the things that come out, I was just.
Yeah, we are definitely going to need a turnaround here.
Right.
End of phase 1, so maybe it's.
It might be just a temporary one for now, but
Correct.
maybe not, maybe there isn't a need.
Okay.
Fire marshal plan. You have a price point on your houses? About
For sale?
Yeah, no, they're gonna be 150 to 200 bucks.
plus lease.
Plus lease.
Look at
for the land.
Stick built garages, which is really a large component of the price.
Thank you very much.
Board, anything else? Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. See you again.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, we have 1 set of minutes to
The
approve.
definitions.
Sure. We're almost done.
Sure.
We'll talk about it.
I wanna see, it's gonna be 100 minutes from the group.
Sure.
We're going over the application.
No, we're just gonna mention.
No,
We shamed them into doing it.
Okay, we have a set of minutes that were carried over from the our Valentine's meeting. We didn't have a forum to approve those minutes, so if I could get a motion on those, and we're still waiting Anita for the 28th, right? February 28th minutes.
Yes, they just need to be revised.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion on the 14th minutes, which were done
So
by
moved.
Shauna?
Oh, that's right. Second.
Okay. Motion second, all in favor?
Johnny,
Aye.
I can't vote. I have vote. I mean, it's a state.
Yeah, that was our problem.
State.
Okay, we have no surety releases. We have no pending referrals from town board. The water course definition was changed at the town board meeting this month, so that has been asked and answered that question.
And the fire.
And defined. So we have nothing from the ZBA or code enforcement, for special projects. Anybody have any updates on their projects? The site design criteria is going through the process. And I guess it's an ordinance committee right now, then eventually it'll go to town board for endorsement. Training. Scott, you're set up for Saratoga, right? Yep. Along with some other folks in town, good. She wanted to send out some announcements from for webinars. MRB's doing webinars.
The county planning department is doing a
County
training on
planning,
the
so there's
13th.
plenty of opportunities for training, so.
Genesee Finger Lakes has another training in Stevia. There's multiple.
Yeah, they're all online, they're very convenient. Sit and have your lunch and listen to Lance, listen to Lance.
Shauna,
Shauna,
procedural question. So I sat through Mr. Brabant's presentation the other night and I got the certificate. So I emailed it to Allison.
No, email it to
Yeah.
Kim, please.
Yeah, she's our keeper now.
Kim's a keeper. of
Kim
the
is the
record.
keeper of the training.
Okay.
You get half credit for listening to Lance.
Yeah, it's only one hand.
I know.
So protocol question on the meetings, because I missed the last one as well, so when we do get those out next time. But I did listen to the entire session.
Mhm.
When it comes time to vote on those meeting minutes, because you weren't there, it requires physical presence.
No, it does not. You can vote to, sorry, it's Becky, my name's Jim, never mentioned it to you guys. Thanks for letting me, give me this opportunity. This forum.
Did you leave?
You can vote on anything before this board, so long as you're familiar with it. You can vote to approve. And the reason that I make that point, if you're not comfortable voting on it, abstain. It's perfectly reasonable. But if there's only two people at the meeting who were present at the meeting, then you're gonna have to step up and read those meeting minutes and say, yep, they seem good to me.
We were pretty unfair to those guys last time, so they were so likely staff, that's why I asked that.
Who were we asking?
Well, there were, both of us were out, so we missed.
Oh.
so it was
Oh,
definitely-
Oh.
So if the next time, one of
Okay.
those three happens to not be here, then
Okay.
we technically wouldn't be able to approve it if that was.
But so
I'd be happy
approving
to-
meeting minutes is not
No, it's not huge. it's
swearing
just-
on a stack
Right.
of Bibles that that's accurate as to what happened, is that you're approving. It's, you know, that's the secretary's role is to get them accurate. And then just, it's an approval.
The
We may have
tougher
an
part
alternate.
is.
Yeah, we may.
We may.
You know,
And just to clarify, for example, I guess is if we're traveling,
For
we're
business.
not allowed to zoom in.
Don't you work
Participate.
everywhere you are? I work everywhere I am.
If you can.
April
zoom in
25th.
If you're traveling on vacation.
You're always working.
I'm gonna be in Buffalo on my way to
Right,
Florida.
if it's,
so
it's business, if it's employer related. you can zoom
Okay,
in.
that.
No. I
You
don't
work for
think that's
yourself.
Yeah,
accurate.
that was a clarification, yeah.
Who clarified that?
Just have that. No,
It
it's part
doesn't
of the,
say,
It was tightened up, but I don't.
I've never heard that. Our remote participation policy gives you more freedom than
no,
that.
we had, there's a new.
So, Doug,
To know the town actually has a policy.
April 25th, I'm
I think it was-
traveling
was
after
it
work
you?
to Buffalo
Or
for
was
the
it
night
me?
to fly to Florida the next morning. That's
I
our
think it
planning
was
board
you.
meeting. I was gonna zoom in and participate.
For business or for.
I
Oh,
can
it's
do
the
that.
Association of Towns.
It was really, you know,
What's her
scratching
name?
it up.
Okay.
oh, don't listen.
No, that's not true. It might be what you guys were told, but I'm telling you.
It is what we were told by-
It was a-
And our loss of.
New York State
Yeah,
lady
New York.
in the
yeah.
meeting. or in
So if
the-
I wanted to, I can.
It's whatever you guys have done.
Tell you what, at the start of the meeting,
Anyways.
I'll ask you a finance question. We'll make it work.
I mean,
Yeah, but seriously,
Traveling for
You have to
work, I mean,
comply with our town's
Yes.
policy, remote participation policy, which I think says you can, so long, if you're absent and notify whoever you're supposed to notify.
The only thing is there has to be a majority quorum in the room.
Yeah,
That's the only
That's
thing,
the
but otherwise
tough
you guys
part.
can participate remotely.
and if it's a public meeting, your name had to go on the public notice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
But you're not gonna be there.
yes,
They can vote,
yes.
or if we had needed like a super majority vote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good to go.
Okay,
I might.
after all that discussion.
Well.
Well,
the
Uh,
next meeting I will be here, but
I'm
I'll
not gonna
just be
read-
arriving back.
On the request of our solicitor, I'm not gonna read all the upcoming applications. I'm consuming you can see them.
Excuse me.
We have a busy meeting on the 11th. Nancy Sands did get her.
This is the same ones.
She got her
ZBA,
variance.
so
She did.
Yep. And Lacey got.
But I will reiterate again, a CBA approval does not mean that it's good planning. So
course not.
It's a very good point.
That's a good statement. That's-
Yes.
that's true. Yes, we have HMOs.
I'm not, sorry. talking
Oh,
to myself.
Okay, so that's what's happening. There's a couple other.
I'm just only trying.
Couple other hanging out there for the 25th, and then there's a couple TBDs that we've got hanging around also, so. Any other questions? Have anybody tried to use their permit?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was gonna ask. You know, there's been some dialogue and training on that. That would be awesome.
Yes, we will do that ASAP. We did talk about doing a Zoom. Is evening ideal? Is it okay if we do it during the day? And
How
you
long
can
do you think it
just
is?
get on
Depending on
YouTube.
what day. Honestly.
If it's a half day, it's part of the day, it's an hour.
How long are we, right, are we talking an hour? or-
Doodle monkey.
Doodle or monkeys here.
Oh, wait,
It's a
Dan.
doodle
Yeah,
poll.
monkey doodle. Why don't
We will
you-
send a doodle poll
Yeah,
out.
send the-
Whatever we do, it will
Okay.
be recorded for the
Okay.
CBA.
All right.
They can also participate.
I wish the
in
list
Zoom.
that came up showed the CPM.
Yeah.
There you go.
I see that too.
And it's hard to find.
We're just
I know.
creatures
You
of
know,
habit
Kim, the
here.
dashboard,
You are.
the dashboard does not have the CPN.
We
number.
know.
Yeah,
We know.
okay.
We're talking
You can
about
search
that.
for it in the search. I found out.
Or you can go to
search.
the application.
I haven't played that.
You search that.
Found
CPM
what I
number.
needed.
In the dashboard, though, you can see the CPN.
Their
I
dashboard
know.
looks different.
Yeah, we can't.
Oh,
The other thing that happens with the whole search thing, it goes nowhere.
I know, it doesn't work all the time.
Is there
It doesn't work all the time. Okay.
Is there a like cutoff, like by X date, everything's gonna be in there, or we're just kind of trying
All
to
new
get to that
applications.
point?
All new ones are going to.
Okay,
Well, but
'Cause
There's no
There's
cutoff
kind
from
of-
the applicant submitting stuff
So
or uploading new
Right.
things to it.
So we
right,
have to keep
tonight, a good
Check.
example though is Sunset.
we did before.
The newest site plan was too big to fit on the web page. But it did make it into the color permit. So
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
Took
It's,
forever to download.
That's,
Yeah.
that's part of the
It's
reason
huge.
they were having trouble.
It was too
scrolling.
big.
It's-
yeah.
It's almost 59.
Drops it, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of megabytes. How they create their visually halfway through it.
Well,
It's because they've got the different
All right.
colors.
Anything else?
I do have something to say.
Oh, sure.
So I wanted to let you all know that I have accepted a position with the city of Canandaigua as our assistant city manager. So, yeah,
congratulations.
thank you, yep.
So you're doing
I'll be
both
working with
jobs.
John.
Yes, that's good.
I'll be working with John,
Hi,
yes.
it's buddy, you had to say hi from me.
Yeah, so my last day will be the 21st.
Wow.
I'm excited, I'll miss everybody.
So will you begin working on giving us control over the north end of the lake?
So Doug's here because he's gonna sit in for you.
Yes.
They're screwing it up.
But Doug
Yeah,
has.
I'm not
there anymore.
Doug knows all about it, so,
Do we have your replacement yet?
yeah.
Well, it's a shame.
It's a shame, man. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You broke it in. too.
I know.
Well, and actually, there's one other announcement too. We're also losing Chris
Oh.
Jensen, effective April 7th.
Wow.
Yeah, that's-
So
What the heck is
we're
happening
making
down
some-
here?
We're making some modifications and we'll be doing some restructuring in the development office, but I'll be your primary person as we work through all these changes.
Wow.
For that, we'll just, Shauna.
I'm not far, I'm
I know
only
you-
6,000
Yeah.
linear feet
Yeah,
away.
we
Oh,
actually,
did
it was like
Chris Jensen
6,100 and some odd feet. I figured out how far she
No,
is.
Doug
So
said
we'll-
you're only 6,000 feet away.
Didn't she sign a non-compete?
Right.
You have to go to the city within, you can't go within 600 feet of.
Right, I'm really just an undercover operative.
This is being recorded.
Get all their secrets to
Exactly.
success.
Didn't say anything.
All right, well, so.
But I'll be here for
One
the
more meeting.
11th.
Okay. All right, anybody have anything else we can do to the board? If not, Amanda.
I'm out of practice. I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:30 this evening.
I'll second.
Second, third, and
Okay, all in
fourth.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Doug, for showing up.
And John Robertella